Hello and welcome to another episode of Teppou Republic. On the last episode, Takahisa faced off against the Okayama army just outside their capital, cutting them down as they charged in with their elite forces. They just weren't able to reach his line in time. As a result of the victory, he was able to besiege their capital and now waits for reinforcements. A Yonago army tried to sneak into Inaba province but encountered Kunimitsu's hidden army. He ambushed their pretty powerful looking but relatively small force in a close quarters battle on a quite horrible day where we were able to very quickly destroy the enemy. Their morale couldn't hold against this deadly surprise attack. Back in Settsu, we managed to clear up all of the Satsuma forces that were hanging around, the hangers-on from the big invasion of our territory, which has now been almost completely cleared up. In the east, we had three armies advancing on Uzen. Yoshiyuji, Tananao and Takemichi are all teaming up to attack this province while Kodama comes in to keep Miyagi safe. The Hiroshima army that had slipped past our defences back in the central region suddenly appeared from hiding to attack Kii province. However, this battle was one that the forces inside the castle had won recently before against the Satsuma. It was the same sort of thing. We bombarded them with fire rockets, with gunfire, and had spear levy inside the castle to lock the enemy in place to be gunned down once they got inside. Right after we beat them, a Hiroshima army that had moved up to stand near Takahisa supported the Okayama in a sally battle out against him, so now he has to fight both of these armies at once, but if he can win, the castle will be very easy to take. Let's see what we can do. I'm glad to hear you've managed to reconcile things with your father. I know he will be very glad to have your support. Myself, I must say I still haven't been convinced as you have. I think it is just my age. It is hard to fight to overturn a system that benefited me personally for so much of my life. Now you may say it's unfair and whatnot, but then this desire that the world should be fair seems rather novel and unnatural to me. I met with Tananao for the first time in a long while, a few days ago. His attitude sounds closer to how you've described that creature Kunimitsu, although much more agreeable. Tananao is happy to be part of the movement, not knowing how it steals from him a noble future. For him, this idea of fairness seems paramount, an idea I'm starting to think he picked up from the Americans. So, I have my views, yes, but I shall not be expressing them to any but those I know will understand my position completely, such as yourself. I am, after all, a soldier, be it for the Todo family or this so-called Sioux state. The logistics of it all are quite the same either way, and at least in this fight the men have something more to gain than a little loot, makes them pretty easy to control. Focusing on the day-to-day stuff keeps all the politics safely above my head where I can't ruin it with my supposedly outdated insights. Anyway, in response to your question about retiring to the old farms in Sugiyama after all this, I agree entirely. I think those small places in the world where the changes of the age never quite reach are going to be the only sorts of places I will really feel at ease in after all this. It's a dreary day on the fields just north of Okayama City, where Takahisa has set up his army to face off against Okayama advancers coming to sally out from the castle currently under siege. Their force is mostly levied infantry and some garrison infantry and spear levy who are taking heavy fire already from the artillery that his position affords. Also coming in to help us are reinforcements coming on the east part of the map right onto the flank of the Okayama army. But on the Okayama side is a full professional army coming from the Hiroshima clan, currently coming on the west part of the map. They're bringing in artillery of their own and lots of high quality troops to join the Okayama's attack on our line. So that is why this battle is going to be fairly decisive. If we can defeat both of these armies, we'll both be putting ourselves in a position to capture Okayama and stopping a Hiroshima invasion. Our forces set up in a pretty standard line, cavalry on the right flank, the right flank has scouts currently on an echelon who were going to fire at the Okayama, but I have to reposition them to deal with the Hiroshima advance. I'm going to put them as something of a breakwater on this little hill off to the right of my line to just fire at the enemy as they advance so that I can try and defeat the Okayama before I change my formation to stop the Hiroshima. The Okayama's more mortars who they brought in are firing at my reinforcements coming in from the east, which is inconvenient. These big blocky and slow moving formations are going to be quite vulnerable to the mortar fire, so unfortunately I am going to take some casualties among these units before they even get anywhere near the fight. Especially because one mortar hit can do substantial damage. You can see piles of bodies are left behind as the mortar rounds drop down, hitting the regiments. Luckily, the rainy day is going to mean that their accuracy and reload time is slightly reduced, so it's not going to be as bad as it was, although of course that problem affects my artillery and more importantly my line infantry. So those guys are going to set up on the flank of the Yokoyama, who are still advancing right towards me and taking artillery fire all the way. The Hiroshima have set up their own artillery, which is now firing towards me and advancing in formation with their main force. You can see though that what I did with the scouts has actually attracted the attention of the Hiroshima artillery. They're all firing at my scouts, so they are basically distracting the enemy's fire from going too near to my main force, where it's more likely to actually hit something and do damage. So the scouts must be very brave to stand there and withstand that barrage as the enemy advance. I have now set up an echelon behind them to receive the Hiroshima once they get closer, so there is scope for them to fall back in a moment. The Yokoyama continue their attack but break off units to come and meet my reinforcements in the east. This unit of levies here comes to start firing at some of my garrison infantry. They get a volley off, doing a good number of casualties. The reason I'm not firing back is because I've set my men to run into a formation, and that formation is actually quite close to the enemy line, so they're still moving to set up. They're going to be at point blank range by the time they do set up, but my gunmen are actually a little bit better than the enemy, so hopefully it will pay off. The fact that it's raining and reducing the effectiveness of those levy infantry means I was pretty safe in actually doing this tactic, just charging the spear levy right across the battlefield into the enemy. The vast majority of my men make it, we charge into the enemy, and now these levies are in trouble. It's especially effective because these levies are actually upgraded with increased accuracy, so it makes more sense to fight them in melee than to fight them at range, where they might actually do okay against my line infantry, although that is what's happening here. You can see the enemy turning to fire at me with multiple regiments who will now engage in a line battle. Their main line is also engaging a line battle with my main line, a situation that's quite good because my main line is just simply superior, so the longer that goes on, the better for me. My scouts are still holding their position on the ridge, taking enemy fire, and now finally being able to fire back at a few of the enemy's flanking regiments from the Okayama force, inflicting a few casualties. The Hiroshima force has been taking my artillery as it's come in, and has already actually taken quite a few casualties. They're also running the whole way, which is reducing their energy, so they're going to arrive at this battle quite tired out. Not such a problem for their line infantry, but they do have a number of melee regiments who are going to struggle as a result. You can see enemy melee regiments are now beginning their attack on my main line, having charged through. They're taking casualties, but not enough to stop them. They've managed to reach my carbine infantry here with some spears. The carbine infantry take heavy casualties immediately. All I have to stop the enemy are a few Buddhist zealots, only about 20 of them, but that's enough to rush in and deal with the entire enemy regiment because Buddhist zealots are so good, so hopefully they'll hold them off. The Hiroshima army is still creeping up. The advanced flank on the left flank of the Yokoyama has met my scouts, who are now going to get out of there. I've pushed forward some Buddhist zealots, a full unit this time, who stop the enemy and hold them in place for a while. I managed to defeat a unit of enemy spear levy immediately and then engage some enemy line infantry in melee there. So that's going really well, although those Buddhist zealots will have to get out of the way very soon because they'll be surrounded by the Hiroshima army. On the east part of the battlefield, the Hiroshima have sent some cavalry to support the Okayama here, but they're just locked in combat with my spears, so very quickly they're going to lose their men, and these men can join the main battle. Chosen warriors of the Emperor, enough has already been said on the importance of this day, and the chance we have to push the Sioux back 50 miles when victory is ours. Instead, let us now turn our minds to our enemy, the hated usurpers, the rebels with a treacherous cause, the puppets of a Western cabal that seek to enslave us all. And they would succeed were it not for the likes of us, the men who see the truth, the men who fight for a righteous path of history, the men who risk everything to forge the world their people need, be it through rain, blood, or fire. Show me, men, that I am right to retain my hope. So the Hiroshima army is now in place. The line battle with their troops has begun, and their melee troops are rushing my line, although they are now, as I said, quite tired, so are doing so quite slowly. The scouts miraculously survived the whole thing and have got out alive. The Buddhist zealots that were supporting them took casualties but managed to escape before the Hiroshima surrounded them, although are now heading back in for more because there's still enemies to defeat. So here you can see Hiroshima melee troops rushing my line. Their morale is already quite low, as you can see though, because they've been peppered for a long time and are now very tired. They're clothes surely weighing them down, soaked after rushing through all this rain. On the east part of the battlefield, some spear levy are rushing to intercept my guys coming in from the east, but that's not going to be enough to stop them. In the center, the enemy's line battling units have essentially just replaced the Okayama ones. They're not putting any more pressure on me than I was under before, since the Okayama were already defeated. Many of the enemy's melee infantry are already defeated as well, falling back from my lines all over the place and surely taking friendly fire from their line battling units as they go. The enemy's spear levy have got engaged with my spear levy here on the east. Mine are probably about equal to theirs, but I have local numerical superiority and the ability to support myself with firearms units. Other firearms units are now engaging the flanks of the enemy's main line, which of course isn't going to last too long. It was just about now that I've realised my mortars have been glitching out the whole battle and I hadn't been using them, so I finally got them working again and directed them to fire right into these big clumps of enemy missile infantry. The mortars of course do devastating damage, especially when units are clumped together like this, and because they're quite close to my line, the accuracy is high, so the enemy there are in trouble. My very small amount of cavalry has gone off on a crusade to destroy the enemy's artillery and has just about finished, so we're free of bombardment from them. The balance bar has swung very far in our favour as Hiroshima forces start to rout across the board. We didn't actually kill all that many of the Hiroshima forces because they arrived late to the battle, were already low on morale just as the battle started, and so routed quite quickly. However, we have completely destroyed the Okayama army, and that's the important thing to take away from this battle, because this allows us to take the castle. So even though the Hiroshima will have strength to fight again, and in fact have more stacks already coming in to reinforce their position, we are going to have the castle on our side. So going forward, the result of this victory should be that we have more victories to come, at least easier ones, in the very near future. So from the results we can see the Okayama force has been very heavily depleted. Takehisa's force is looking battered as well. Many regiments are at low strength, many of them somewhere in the middle, so he probably can't take too many more battles. Preferably he needs to regenerate for a few turns before he fights again. Moving on, we get a message saying that because of our punishment of anti-Western aggression in the past, we've actually had increased trade deals with the United States and all foreign powers, I think, but actually it doesn't really make much difference because most of our foreign trade is being raided because the Imperial forces dominate the trade routes, but still, it might be giving us something. Over in Bizen, it's now time for us to make Okayama ours. The balance bar is extremely far in our favour, as you might expect. The enemy have just a few surviving troops inside. Now I realised that I was too hasty in auto-resolving this fight, because Takehisa's army has some regiments in it that have no men whatsoever, and they get deleted by the auto-resolve, as it tends to do. So we lose some very high level Buddhist zealots and a squad of leveled up spear levy from his reinforcement group. Very annoying, but at least we now have the castle. I'm going to start repairing it. There's nothing I need to burn down in this province, which is good news. It's not spreading Imperial influence or anything like that. So now I just need to prepare to defend against the 1.5 Hiroshima stacks there to the west, and helping me is the fact that I can build some really decent melee units, including Bakumatsu Lancers, high level samurai units here. This capture now means I've got a nice western line there, a flat line of defense against all Imperial attacks, which is going to be quite handy. Next up, I need to deal with all of my forces in Settsu and start moving them into useful positions. One army, Takayuki's former army, is moving west there to stop the Takasuki coming up from Awaji Island. The forces around the castle are first going to attack this random Hiroshima army. It looks like it's a load of samurai. I can't even remember where these guys came from, but they've managed to get quite far into my territory. But unfortunately for them, my huge armies at Settsu are well able to destroy them. There's also a Satsuma army nearby. Takayuki is going to come back down from near the capital to attack it. They retreat as expected, but luckily for me they retreat towards Settsu rather than across the bridge into Kawachi. This means these three armies can now team up to attack this Satsuma army as well. So I move two of the armies into reinforcement range, and now the guys inside the castle itself can initiate a battle. So the Satsuma are in trouble. Their army is very outpowered on the balance bar, so we'll just auto-resolve them out of existence. It was actually a quite nice combined arms force as well. Not sure what they wanted to do with it, but whatever it was, the loss of their vanguard forces earlier meant they were never going to succeed, and now they have lost their lives for even trying. So this means the situation here in our central western area has finally been completely cleared up. All of the enemy's invading armies of late have been dealt with, and now we can actually finally push the fight back to the actual battlefront and start defending our frontiers, and perhaps even thinking about moving on once we get our forces up to the border.
Gentlemen, I don't think everyone here quite realizes what the situation is over there. The Japanese have flat out told us that they want to be like us, and that they want to fight to give their world the same principle of freedom that our founding fathers did for ours. These two republicans are not only our surest ally in the Order of Asia, but they work so hard to impress us that they've damn near toppled a 1,000-year dynasty with troops who proudly speak more English than some of our own people. If these people aren't to be our best friends, we're as good as alone out there.
Here in Uzen, because the enemy didn't attack me during the end turn sequence, not taking my bait with Yoshiyuji there, it's time for me to attack them. First, Tananao moves in to besiege the castle. That situation looks very dangerous for him, but of course, we're very soon going to be able to reduce the enemy's strength outside the castle by getting rid of the Sendai Shogunal Vanguard forces. First, Yoshiyuji moves up into a reinforcement position, and then Takemichi comes in all the way from the west to attack the Shogunals there, but they just run away straight through Yoshiyuji's zone of control. He does nothing about it. But now Yoshiyuji can chase him down, and the enemy have conveniently moved to a position that is now in reinforcement range from Tananao. So the Anagakojis can team up to attack the Shogunals here, and we can easily wipe them out, as you can see. Plus, we now have Takemichi moved up to sit next to the castle. So these 3 entire stacks are going to be able to be put against the 1 stack of enemy forces inside. So even though the enemy now have a formidable garrison, we're still going to be able to take them down. And Yoshiyuji very conveniently levels up from defeating those Shogunals. Very nice. So he just needs to move back into range of the castle, and now Uzen is in quite a lot of trouble. We can go back to Tananao, and see what the balance bar looks like. It's very far in our favour. We can just auto-resolve to capture the castle with minimal losses. So this is another castle captured from the Shogunals, and really they don't have the ability at this point to stop us from just continuing to do this. We have 3 stacks, and with Kodama coming to join the fight soon, we'll have 4. I don't think the enemy even have enough money or provinces to be able to field that level of force. So hopefully the Shogunals will go down very soon. Now I didn't have enough money to actually repair the castle at Uzen, but I am going to have to leave a stack here anyway because I'm out of movement points for some of them, so I can fully garrison the castle to keep it under control for now. Tananao is the one who has the most movement points. He isn't going to hang around. I'm going to get him to continue on and to assault further north because he has enough movement points to actually reach the border of the province, and he can move up into Ugo next turn. To see whether that's going to be a good idea, I'm first going to move a shinobi up just to see if the enemy have anything up here. Well, I knew they had nothing on the road immediately in front of me, but actually the road all the way to Ugo itself is clear and there's no standing army at Ugo, so I can just move Tananao up. And it'll take him 2 or 3 turns to get there, but hopefully by the time he gets there still won't be any enemy forces there and we can capture it without having to do anything particularly special. Over in the west, we've got Kunimitsu still attempting to start a siege at Hoki. Again, I move over and besiege the castle. The balance bar is very not favourable to me, and the enemy have naval support fire. I wanted to move up my reinforcements here to make it better, but they're actually stuck in zones of control again. So I can't get them up right now. That was quite annoying, and I didn't want to actually remain in this sieging position because Kunimitsu is going to get attacked presumably by the enemy, who will be reinforced by the Matsue from multiple directions, which could cause various annoyances. So I decided to cancel the siege and first push this Matsue army away. I could now go back into the siege and it'll be a little bit safer, but actually I decided it's better to just go into an ambush position because the enemy will see my small stack there and hopefully be baited to walk through the ambush point for Kunimitsu to defeat them, and then we'll go back into the siege next time. So now time for the end turn sequence. The Sendai annoyingly bribe some units over in Miyagi province to go and join the Shogunals yet again. So that was annoying of them. I only just recruited those units there, but we'll see what they are in a bit. The Matsue very conveniently do take my bait, although only with a small force. That force is very good though. Bakumatsu Lancers and Buddhist Zealots wandering east are now going to be completely wiped out by a sudden blitzkrieg from Kunimitsu's ambushing force. So it was good to have gotten rid of those high level enemy units without any losses whatsoever. And now the actual balance of power in Hoki is getting much closer to being in our favour, so we should be able to stand a chance of fighting there if we do need to. The Hiroshima continue to move through Bizen, not going for the castle itself, apparently moving north into Mimasaka, so we'll see what they're trying to do. The Okayama in Harima move east towards Settsu, which is okay, I have lots of forces there. The Takazuki don't attack right now from Owaji, and the Sado do land forces over in Uzen province, a new landing point for them, so it seems they're going to attack my recent gains there. So now I have to hack through some bad news at the start of this turn. We've got invasion forces landing, we've got sabotage, we've got the loss of troops to enemy agents, plenty of enemy ninjas rushing through our territory, but good news, it's finally summer, so we're going to get some better weather in the battles from now on. So now I'm going to deal with those forces that were coerced over by the shogunate agent. Kodama, who's standing right by, comes to attack them and they retreat, a sensible choice. We can see it's actually just 2 units of matchlock militants, nothing to be too worried about, but I had just recruited them in order to keep public order well here in Miyagi. But I'm going to stick it to the shogunate by just recruiting 2 more, because I have enough money to easily do that without even thinking about it. Kodama is going to ignore those rebels and continue north with his original mission, because there's not much those rebels can do against me right now. I can also use the shinobi to make sure that his mission north is going to be okay. We're heading here towards Iwate. The shogunals do have a small number of forces in the castle and it has an okay garrison, but Kodama will still have a nice numerical advantage. There are some reinforcements apparently coming in from the north, but we don't know if they're going to reach in time. The Seido, who look like they're going to attack Uzen there, are definitely going to have a hard time if they do, because I'm going to fully garrison the castle with troops belonging to Takemichi, and there's probably no chance of them taking the castle for now. I can also use this opportunity to repair the castle, so I'll go through one more turn, having good public order due to garrison, then the next time the castle will enable Takemichi to move. Anyway, it's time to keep pushing into Ugo, so Tananao can continue his walk upwards. It'll be 2 turns before he gets there, and the enemy don't appear to have any reinforcements coming towards the castle. We see nothing on the road behind it, and we know there's nothing on the road coming up to it because we're coming up it right now, so it looks like that's going to be a guaranteed capture very soon. They could have something there in the east, and that bit I can't see, but it seems unlikely at this point. Yoshiyuji, I had a couple of choices what to do with him. I was wondering whether to send him east to join Kodama to attack Iwate from the south, but actually I realised I could send him north and then attack Iwate from the west using this road that goes between the provinces. So I was going to do that, so that I was attacking from 2 sides and generally covering all the roads with my armies. They arrived even before the smoke had finished rising from the remains of the castle. A gang of smartly dressed strangers, followed by a man I was more familiar with in traditional dress. The strangers were from all over Tsu, hoping that Fukushima would be their chance to enter politics with some real power. The familiar man was Lord Okazaki, the man whose lands we were stood on, entering himself in the hope that his loyal population would elect him high enough that he would get something like his old powers back. A sorry sight to see him like that, but on the other hand, to see him engage in our new world was satisfying. Back in Bizen, we can now see one of the 2 Hiroshima armies we know are moving into Mimisaga. Unfortunately, we can only see the smaller one, but at least we can deal with that. So Takahisa is able to move right out of Bizen, even though he only just captured it because the public order is looking very good. So he can go and attack that smaller army. It's actually the survivors of the army that he fought alongside the Okayama recently. They run away, and I was wondering whether I should chase them. I guess there's 2 risks. The main risk was that the Hiroshima main force, the bigger one, would just go back and take Bizen if I moved Takahisa away from it. But looking at the sort of garrison I had, I eventually decided it would be okay. I got rid of those light guns so that there would be more space for garrison units inside the castle because they'll be useless in a siege defense. Now I'm just checking what sort of units are available. It's basically a bunch of levies, but we do have some key units like mortars and garrison infantry who will be able to perform very well in a defensive fight. So overall, since I'm going to have a full stack of troops, the Hiroshima will struggle to take Bizen, so it's safe to move on. The other danger was that Takahisa would get ambushed doing the movement that he just did, but as you can see he didn't. So I don't know where the Hiroshima army actually is. I think it must be on the forest on the west side of the road, too far away to ambush here on the east part of the road. So the survivors of that battle are wiped out. Takahisa has finished them off. Now he can just stand around essentially and see what the Hiroshima do and react to it once it occurs. Back up in hockey, now that the enemy have taken my bait and reduced their strength, I'm also able to start moving to attack them. The zones of control have cleaned up a little bit. So Kunimitsu is going to go and lay siege to the castle. This will stop them from getting involved in any reinforcing fights against the Matsue force right next to them. So my little reinforcement group can come over and attack that Matsue force. They're going to just leave, which is going to further alter the balance of power in our favour, but still the defenders inside Hockey Castle are powerful, so I'm not going to just attack them right now. I'm going to bring up some more reinforcements from the east and hope the enemy don't do the same thing in the meantime, and get Kunimitsu to a point where he can attack the castle if he needs to. And perhaps we don't even need to, because we may be able to siege them out if the enemy don't reinforce this position. We shall see. Down on Awaji Island, the Takasuki are moving forces over who look like they're going to attack, but I'm not going to wait for them. I'm going to attack them. I moved Takayuki's former army over the crossing onto the island itself, so very soon we'll have to face that Takasuki army, but it's not very big, so we should be able to take it down quite easily. Takayuki, leading his new main force, is going to move west. His plan is going to be to move up towards Bizen to join the fight there and hopefully push into more enemy territory if we can. Now the fleet that was going to save Compton, but now of course is tragically too late, has finally been completed. It's led by Murdoch Carter, another American general leading a Rononoke class ironclad. So he is going to wipe out this tiny enemy fleet in front of us as we bring our huge fleet consisting of 2 stacks of ships to come around the peninsula. The key plan here is just to wipe out all of the Imperial fleets that are hanging around bombarding Key. You can see Key is covered in smoke, all of its buildings are destroyed. We really need to get it back on its feet, but we have to wipe out all of these bombarding enemy forces first. So these 2 fleets will be able to do that soon. That will also stop the enemy from landing more naval invasions in this area as they have done previously, which will make things safer for our interior. So we need to gain naval dominance in this area basically, and that fleet hopefully will achieve it for us. As we go forward, the Sawano appear to attack Mimasaka again, the second time they've moved troops towards the province, this time with more troops than they did previously. So if this is a real invasion, Takahisa is going to have to go and stop that very soon. But the Hiroshima army appears and goes and sits right next to him, so tempting a target, so we'll try and defeat them and then move on to Mimasaka if that's what we need to do. The Takasuki don't attack the guys I just moved into Owaji, and the Seido don't attack Takemichi in Uzen. They're going to move south towards Echigo, which is fine by me because I have forces there. In Ugo, the Sendai Shogunal Vanguard did move a tiny army up behind Tananao. Not enough, of course, to stop him. He's already past their line of defense. He can rush on and attack the castle. He quickly overwhelms it with his superior army. The province will fall. So that's another decisive victory, which is really pushing the shogunate back now. They have very little territory remaining. There's nothing I need to destroy, so we'll leave the province intact. It does have some upgradable buildings to provide superior troops, but at this point I don't think I'll recruit any new troops into these armies. They've got everything they need. My shinobi confirms that there's no more enemy forces ahead, so very soon I can just push on and take the final shogunate province in Honshu. There are more shogunate provinces to the north that we're going to have to attack in Hokkaido, but that shouldn't be too difficult. I've got my navies nearby to help out. Yoshiuji, who was going to continue going east across this road, is now going to have to go through the Sendai army, although that isn't going to be very difficult at all. The Sendai fall back as I approach. I'll be pursuing them next turn as we move into Iwate. Kodama can start his attack on Iwate right now. He can't quite reach the castle, but he can get pretty far into the province, so next time we'll have the castle under siege, and I'm pretty sure there's nothing there that'll be able to stop me, so Kodama should be able to actually take it on his own. Back in Miyagi, you can see the public orders still quite bad. I'll be recruiting more forces there to make things go right, and I'm also going to punish the traitors who made things wrong in the first place. Takemichi, who no longer has to defend Uzen from the Seido who've gone down to Echigo, can simply sneak over and destroy these matchlock militants. So that's the end of them. They did manage to kill a few of us, but overall their rebellion was quite ill thought out. So Takemichi has crushed them and will now just remain around as a garrison. I don't really need to push him north to continue the attack with the others. Down in Owachi Island, my forces are going to move forward to attack the Takasuki army here. You can see the enemy army is not all that good. We have an advantage on the balance bar, but I will fight this for myself because I don't have a general in the army. I need to keep my forces as strong as possible, so I have loads of men left for the assault on the castle at Owachi itself, which may be more heavily defended. So we'll see a quick summary of that battle and push on with our attack next time. That's it for this time. We'll be putting some more nails in the Shogun's coffin on the next episode of Teppou Republic.